Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. As you've seen there, Mr. Ibrahim Modibbo joins us next. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Mr. Chamberlain.
Yeah, just finished taking a look at this NFIU provisions, funds transfer, how things should go. And here we are now talking about this allegation of 150 billion naira fraud. And sometimes you see these figures, and as reporters, when you write these figures, sometimes when you take a back seat and just think about it, you just wonder what really is going on here. But for this particular case, it's been back and forth. Several perspectives and scenarios, agencies involved in this matter. There was a petition against individuals, about 15 of them, including the managing director of NIRSAL. Then there are several other persons alongside him. But at the moment, he's not in office. And then there are questions as to what really the situation is at the moment with this investigation. So first of all, start off with telling us about your impression of this fraud allegation against him.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chamberlain, for giving me this invitation this morning to talk on this issue of great importance. You see, the allegation of fraud is based on some misconceptions, misperceptions, misrepresentation of facts, and also it had to do with the virtue, I don't know, with the evils of social media, so to say, where some people, because of some pecuniary reasons, tend to use the social media as a weapon of trying to ouster somebody they don't like his face. As far as I'm concerned, based on the Freedom of Information Bill, of which as a journalist, as the chairman board of editors of Verbatim magazine, one of the most prominent investigative magazines in Nigeria, I've been able to delve into this matter from the time when it came on board. It has been a matter that has been lingering for about 2 years or more ago, and therefore, or more than that, and therefore I've been able to patiently look at the issue dispassionately. And I've arrived at the conclusion that based on investigations, Mr. Chamberlain, the issue has been propped up by some people that maybe do not like the face of the MD, Mr. Aliu Abati Abdul Hamid. This is somebody that I can say I've known for the past 40 years or thereabout. And he's also somebody that I can vouch for his integrity, his decency, his morality, and also a background of transparency, honesty, probity, and accountability.
You know, we're trying to look at processes, institutions, how things work to ensure that agencies of government function as they ought to, irrespective of who is there, no matter whose ox is God. But in this particular case, for instance, if you check several other places, there are several scenarios. The government, there's been investigation. Government looked into certain matters. Government, because it's not just him now, because are you going to say you're vying for 14 other persons who petition were written against? Why single out only him? And then government sacked him at some point. So those agencies, they are saddled with such responsibility to ensure that things are done. So assuming without conceding that social media persons may use that platform to prop up certain things, how then do you relate with those other agencies that investigated it and then his outward sack by the government?
You see, one problem that is associated with this government is that if you look at the president, when he came on board, he had 3 fundamental issues at stake that he had wanted to fight. One is the issue of fighting corruption. So if there's any figure that comes his way, if somebody with even ulterior motives, I'll be able to come to say that, look, Mr. President, see these figures, especially based on this fictitious petition. When this petition came on board, about 4 or 5 agencies, including EFCC, DSS, the police, NFIU, and ICPC, have all delved into the investigation process of this same particular issue. But then, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice of the Federation, Mr. Malami, looking at the issues of duplication of this investigation process and also not to spend unnecessary resources on one investigation about 4 or 5, harmonized, the investigative process and left it in the hands of the police. He said, look, the police should investigate. He sent a letter to the IG of police to make sure that this thing is thoroughly investigated so that the others could just hands off and allow the process to be done by the police so as to minimize cost and also waste of resources. So having done that, the IG sent the former DIG, Ibrahim Lamordi, who was also the former EFCC chairman. In terms of forensic investigation in this country, Ibrahim Lamordi falls within the bracket of the gifted when it comes to investigative policing. So it was Ibrahim Lamordi that went and delved into these issues one after the other. And based on the Freedom of Information Bill that I've had, I've been able to get a copy of the submissions of Mr. Lamordi to the government. And in that submission, virtually almost all the points have been looked at dispassionately, one point after the other, and it has arrived at the conclusion that most of these things were just frivolous. They were...
So now, don't you think there's something missing? If all of these people are righteous, as perhaps you think, why is it then that government, who has all this information, these agencies report to, submit all their reports to, why haven't they been reinstated?
No, for now, you see, why I'm so pained, why my heart bleeds, is that for now, Aliyu Abati Abdurrahim seems to be the only one that has been focused as a point of persecution.
No, but there's Mr. Idris Aweda, Mr. Olusegun Stephen,
yes, all this,
Mojid Raji, Etim Omobude, you know, several, Idris, Abdullah, Ibrahim Abdullah, several others.
From the investigation I've had, Mr. Chamberlain will agree with me that all of them are in their offices. It was only Abdurrahim that has been able to, that was eased out.
Remember
for
the investigation. There are questions as to NIRSAL microfinance.
Yes.
The COVID funds. There's just so many questions, and you wonder, why does society run this way? You
see, Mr. Chamberlain, there's a problem. A lot of people do not know the workings of these two organizations. You know, there are two organizations. There's NIRSAL PLC, Public Liability Company, and also there's there's NIRSAL Microfinance Bank. These are two different entities. Okay. The NIRSAL PLC, it is strictly based on securing risk, sharing risk, and also assisting. It doesn't disburse funds. It doesn't collect funds from the federal government.
But you know that there are questions as to the disbursement, the management of all of those funds, the allegations that there's fraud involved in all of those cases.
No, the management rests with the NIRSAL Microfinance Bank, which is not under the purview
of our colleagues in
Abdurrahim.
Go ahead.
Mr. Modibbo, you said you've known him for 40 years. So why should we take your word for it about your claimed integrity of Mr. Abati?
I didn't hear the first leg of the question. I didn't hear, sorry.
If you can you confirm that you can hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yes, you said you've known Mr. Abati for 40 years. So I believe your relationship goes beyond that of being an acquaintance, you know, to something closer than we know. You know him on a personal level, I believe. 40 years is not a joke. So why should we take your word for it? Is your neutrality guaranteed here on your acclaimed integrity of Mr. Abati?
You know, I knew him as a young man who is highly educated, coming from a very sound background, based on the antecedents of his progeny. You see, for these 40 years, I've never met him one-on-one. Honestly, since that time when we were in Mubi, I've not met him up to this moment that I'm talking to you. But based on my research, based on my findings as an investigative journalist, I've been able to discover that people have had misconceptions based on the erroneous impression created by some people who do not like his face. Most of the people that have been associated in this petition are in their offices. Only him that has been eased out. So I'm sure he must have maybe stepped on toes. And most of these allegations, if you've seen, they are allegations that are look very spurious, very suspicious, and they are allegations that are watery. As far as I'm concerned, somebody writing a petition calling on somebody that he married a South African wife. Is that not ridiculous? You see somebody talking about him buying houses in here and there. There was an ex-convict in Yola, which is not true. Based on these verifiable facts from Ibrahim Lamorde's report to the IGP, and which a copy has been made to me, I've been able to find out that all these things are spurious allegations that have no basis, they have no foundation. It was just somebody that doesn't like his face and wanted to ease him out. If not, why is it there is only him that has been singled out for persecution? He has been eased out, he has been suspended, and that he has not been found wanting. Is there any court of law that has found him wanting of corruption? And after all, even the capital base of NIRSAL PLC does not amount up to 150 billion. The total capital base is even twice. If you multiply the capital base twice, it will form maybe approximately to 150. So where do they find all these things where there's nothing? You can't build a foundation based on empty platform. And therefore, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not talking to you this morning based on my own contact with him, or maybe based on familiarity, but as a principled and a journalist that has been in investigative processes for almost about 36, 37 years post-graduation as a journalist in this country. So I think I stand a high ground as the editor, board editor of my magazine, to tell you that what I've been able to find is the fact and nothing but the truth.
Okay, so what's your explanation? What's your explanation for questions around the mismanagement of COVID funds, around the mismanagement of agric funds, if indeed, as you have noted, the mandate of NIRSAL is not to keep those funds? The funds are held in the CBN, by the CBN, which is the regulating authority over NIRSAL.
Yes, the NIRSAL PLC is under the purview of the CBN, and most of the asset base are also within the confines of the CBN. NIRSAL PLC has not in any way been associated with disbursements. Under no circumstance has it been. It has never been in contact with the issue of COVID-19. There is NIRSAL microfinance bank, and that microfinance bank is the one that is supposed to be making all this disbursement. The only thing that NIRSAL PLC does is to guarantee. That is why it is called Nigeria Incentive-Based Risk-Sharing System for Agricultural Lending. It is only there to give cover, to guarantee to people that are likely to have risks. And therefore, it has nothing to do with disbursements. It has nothing to do with lending processes. And it has nothing to do with all this. So I think it's based on figment of imagination of people that do not like this young man to be in office. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm telling you, from the viewpoint of my investigation, I found out that most of these people, most of even the petitioners, are fictitious petitioners. Some of them, their office cannot be verifiable. Some of their telephone numbers cannot be verifiable. Some of their even houses cannot be verifiable. Some are living in, like number 43 in Ghana Street, is found to be a food vendor palace called Food Portion. So there is no thing to hold on to tell the world that this person has stolen anything, or this person has been dubious, or he has been able to manage any resources. Because NIRSAL PLC is different from NIRSAL, this microfinance bank. And that is why people do not know. There's differences. And all these are divided into two sections manned by two different people. Where Mr. Abati holds sway is NIRSAL PLC. And it is just to guarantee risk-sharing scheme for agricultural lending, which has to do with
Mr.
taking
Modibbo,
care of farmers.
Just a second.
Yes, I'm listening, yes.
Are you saying that there are no corruption allegations at all?
I can tell you, if you're able to lay your hands on the report, which I have, and based on the findings, except if there's anything new that's been able to come up yesterday or today. But as far as I'm concerned, based on what I've been able to research, based on my own findings, I have not seen any iota of corruption. What needs to be done now is maybe to apologize to this young man and take him back to his office.
Okay.
Because
if you
I've
say
not seen
there are
anything
no, just one second,
there's no
Mr.
string.
Modibbo, my apologies.
It's not like a sword of Damocles that you can hang onto a neck.
Just a second.
To
if
say that,
you
look,
say,
this man has stolen anything.
If you say there are no allegations, no proof of any corruption, how come the federal government of Nigeria didn't have the information that you have? Ministries, departments, agencies investigated, because I mean, I know you would agree with me that it's not a small thing for the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria or anyone at that to just remove an officer out of office just at the whim of and caprice of any thought. So I'm wondering, if you say that there are no allegations and this action has been taken, do you think he should prosecute?
Zooming without necessarily conceding to some of these allegations and fundamental flaws arising therefrom, Mr. Ayu agree with me that the federal government should have done due diligence in terms of investigation. If they found Abati wanting, why did they prosecute him? But up to this point, he has not been prosecuted. There's nothing to hang on to.
You know,
and secondly,
if that's
all
true,
these people that have
just
had
one
their
second,
names
Mr. Modibbo.
I'm coming,
Mr.
Ayu, let me land, please.
Okay.
All these people that have been, all these people whose names appear in the petition, where are they? Are they not in their offices today? Why have they not been sacked? So I'm telling you that Mr. Abati might have even stepped on some toes that don't like his face, and therefore they could use any means. You know, a drowning man could even hold a snake if he wants to get out of being drowned. And therefore, to me, as far as I'm concerned, there is nothing to hang on to, except if there's any allegation that has been able to come up between yesterday and
now, there's something you said earlier. Just a second,
based
Mr.
on the
Modibbo.
things
There's something you said earlier. You said that NIRSAL PLC is supposed to guarantee the loans given out by NMFB. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. If that is the case, you know, of course, just a second. If that's NIRSAL Microfinance Bank, the bank. Now, if you say that it is the job of a NIRSAL PLC to guarantee loans given out by the microfinance bank, NIRSAL Microfinance Bank, you also are aware, of course, that there are corruption cases in NIRSAL Microfinance Bank. Isn't there a correlation somewhere?
But you see, hanging it onto, if there's corruption in NIRSAL Microfinance Bank, why should you be hanging on to the neck of Mr. Abati?
But that is the, you just said it yourself, Mr. Modibbo, you just said it yourself. Just a second. You just said it yourself that it is the job of NIRSAL PLC to guarantee the loans given out by the microfinance bank, the NIRSAL Microfinance Bank. So who takes responsibility, if not NIRSAL PLC?
You see, the responsibility of the guarantor, he is guaranteeing risk sharing in terms of agricultural lending. That's just a guarantor. But it's a different thing altogether from somebody that is giving disbursing the loans. He has nothing to do with disbursement. He has nothing to do with funding. He does look. In fact, it's not only the microfinance bank. The NIRSAL PLC guarantees for small and medium scale enterprises. It does also for agricultural business enterprises and also for individuals. If need be, they can stand as a guarantor to you in risk sharing. And therefore, I don't see anything that you can hang on to this man as saying that he has been able to steal anything. If he has, take him to court. And in Nigeria, you cannot prosecute anybody without a valid court order. If anybody has done anything, you cannot say that this person is corrupt, except if he has been tried and found wanting by the court of law. And in this circumstance, this man has not been found wanting. And most of these allegations that has been centered, that has been profiled against him, they are just spurious allegations based on self-centeredness, based on misinformation, and also based on lack of knowledge of journalism. Why you use the social media as a crisis point of trying to hang a dog when you don't like his face.
Well, you know, I mean, just last week, this is coming up because the Senate ad hoc committee investigating alleged uneven disbursement of loans, grants, and interventions in the 6 geopolitical zones by NIRSAL Microfinance Bank. They did urge the Central Bank of Nigeria to write off this trapped 180 billion naira loan granted Nigerians as a result of this coronavirus COVID pandemic. So several scenarios just playing itself out. So we're keeping tabs on how the Senate proceeds with this one, which is just several issues in that sector. But thank you for coming on this morning, Ibrahim Modibbo, for your time today.
Thank you.
So.